Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, everyone. We have 1 hour dedicated for our Lunch and Learn, and we were very excited that our Ramsey County Commissioners were able to join us, as well as Amanda Nickerson from Trellis. So thank you, panelists, for being able to join us today. I know these middle of the day things, everyone's super busy, so appreciate you taking the time. Our class group has people from kind of every industry that touches senior services. And all of those folks are always interested in how we can work together with each other in all kinds of new ways to support seniors. So thank you for, oh, I'm echoing with someone. Is everyone else hearing that, or is it me? Okay. We have a few topics that I prepared for the panelists ahead of time. So we'll kind of run through a few things that we heard from people at the beginning. We also will reserve some time for all of our class members who are joining to give some input back to our commissioners about ways that we all might be able to work together to advocate for seniors as well. So we'll just get started, I think. If our panelists want to each introduce yourselves so we kind of orient everyone to who we've got today, we will, I don't remember the order on my slide, so we'll start with Tara. Do you want to introduce yourself today?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So my name is Tara Jebens-Singh, and I am Ramsey County Commissioner for District 1, which is the northern suburbs and includes the White Bear Township and Vadnais Heights and North Oaks and Gem Lake on this side of town, but then goes as far over as Shoreview, Mounds View, Arden Hills. And I will say, full disclosure, for those of you who have not met me, I was part of class for many years as in a previous role as the adult programs coordinator at White Bear Lake Area Schools, and have worked with many of you, and it's so great to see all of your faces. I will say that as a county commissioner, while we do oversee a lot of health and human services, which include older adult care, we're kind of at a sky high level. So I'm just as interested in hearing from you all as I am to be able to report back from our role in where things are at today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hey,
Uh,
Tara, you're being very modest. Tara was really the reason class got developed and got it to the place that it was many, many years ago. And you were also president. So we don't want to let that go unmentioned.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
Scott.
And I will say, just for because I have such a long history with classes, to say that class have been around for a long time before I came around, but I think I was very much, as many of you are, part of class 2.0. We had a community forum on seniors through the White Bear Lake School District that was probably a 1 to 2 year community project, and that kind of relaunched class in its current way of being. And it's a very thriving organization, thanks to many of the leaders on this call. So happy to have passed the baton on to very capable hands.
Thank you. And Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, bonjour everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Miller. I am Ramsey County Commissioner for District 7, which represents White Bear Lake, Maplewood, and North St. Paul. This is my first time meeting you guys, well, some of you guys, and being a part of this space. So thank you for having me and inviting me today.
Thank you. And Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Amanda Nickerson. I work at Trellis, which is your area agency on aging, where we are serving older adults and caregivers in the 7 county metro region. And kind of like Tara said, I am very interested to hear feedback on some of today's topics because we are an advocate on behalf of providers across our region and our state, and there is a lot going on with the funding that we are responsible for and other funding sources that you all tap into to support older adults. So we use conversations like these to relay messages and impact back to our state partners, which is primarily the Minnesota Board on Aging, who's also responsible for HCBS. So grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because of the numbers we've got today, I'm going to keep us rolling. If everyone else is interested to put your name and organization. If you're with an organization today, you can drop that in the chat so we have an idea of who's here. But otherwise, we'll kind of roll right into our topics. If we could start with Amanda, if you could just give us a primer on the Older Americans Act, kind of start with the basics of what that is, and then kind of some opportunities that people should know about, changes this year, that kind of thing.
Happy to do so. Am I able to share?
Amanda, I think you're on the call twice and it is echoing a little bit. Maybe I could be. Is there a second Amanda? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a popular name in my my cohort, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there are two Amandas on the call.
Okay, sorry about that.
There might even be three. It's a good name. Am I
Amanda,
still echoing?
are you able to share? I'm sorry, you should be able to. I don't see any settings that say that.
I just got it. Thank you so much. So I was invited to this group from my colleague Sarah Adams, who works with me at Trellis as an Elder Care Development Partnership Coordinator. I'm gonna share. Are you seeing a PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Fabulous. Okay, so I was invited to talk with you all about what the Older Americans Act is, and just by the participant roster, I know that many of you are current grantees of the Older Americans Act, but for the rest of you, I'm hopeful that you can get an understanding of why the Older Americans Act exists, who we function or how we function as an area agency on aging in the state of Minnesota, and how we can be a partner with you, whether we grant your organization money or not. So like I said, Trellis serves as the area agency on aging for the 7-county metro region, which is a designation under the Federal Older Americans Act. So being a AAA is the reason why we are responsible for Older Americans Act funding. And within our organization, we have a mission to provide services, information, and innovations to help people optimize well-being as they age. So while we are an area agency on aging responsible for federal funding, we also support older adults and caregivers through other programs, such as the Minnesota Aging Pathways. We participate in network collaborations like this one here. And we also have the Juniper program, which we have launched to help connect healthcare revenue with social care in the communities. The Older Americans Act was passed by Congress in 1965 and requires a reauthorization every 4 years. So right now we're waiting on a reauthorization, but because it is a law, the allocations from Congress are guaranteed to state units on aging every year. So the Older Americans Act implemented 56 different state units on aging. So each state unit on aging has a contract with the federal government for their state to accept federal Older Americans Act funds. In the state of Minnesota, the Minnesota Board on Aging has been designated as Minnesota's state unit on aging. They are a governor-appointed board who have staff that are employed by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. So it is just layered and complex in Minnesota. But across the country, all state units on aging are responsible for the same 4 principles under the Older Americans Act, as are area agencies on aging. So Trellis is one of 618 AAAs, as we call ourselves, across the country. And again, all of us across the country are responsible for many of the things I'm going to share with you today. I'm just going to share with you the Minnesota flavor of the Older Americans Act. And then across the country, there are 20,000 service providers who receive Older Americans Act funding. And across the country, Triple A's can deliver those services, such as transportation, case management, or nutrition services, but not in Minnesota. So we're a little bit different. Another not as well-known fact is that the Older Americans Act also established the Ombudsman Program, which helps with resident rights in nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And it also implements and funds the Senior Community Service Employment Program. So both of those are overseen by the Minnesota Board on Aging and DHS here in Minnesota. In Minnesota, we have 7 area agencies on aging, and collectively, we receive $43 million in state and federal funds, all from the Minnesota Board on Aging, which you can imagine is a primary source of our organization's revenue. But like we talk with our partners, it's important to diversify our revenue stream. So this does not show our entire budget as a AAA, but shows the magnitude of funds that the federal government and the state government has committed to supporting older adults. The breakdown is there, and of the Older Americans Act direct service funds, so of the $24 million, Trellis receives 42%. And that's determined through a funding formula that the state creates with the federal government. We are also responsible for advocacy efforts in our region, advocating for providers and older adults. We're also responsible for developing programs and administering these funds. Most people know us from our direct service to older adults, which is the Minnesota Aging Pathways Service, funded by the state of Minnesota. So this is the service that older adults, case managers, caregivers generally first interact with to learn about many of the services that you all provide, or as they look at different options to help them as they age. Within the Older Americans Act, we have about $13 million here at Trellis that we obligate to around 60 different community-based organizations through grants and contracts, but they are layered with regulations. And so I wanted to break down kind of the sequence of regulations that we have to follow. So these dollars are federal dollars, which means our first regulation to adhere to is CFR 200, which is a financial regulations, CFR 1321, which is the federal regulation for Older Americans Act funding specifically. So all of the eligibility, the targeting, and the financial requirements related to these direct service dollars come from 1321. The federal regulations also dictate how organizations can spend OAA money on equipment. So if you are in transportation and you want to purchase a van, there is a lot of bureaucratic red tape to go through to purchase the van, prove that you have the best value, prove the devaluation of it year over year, and tracking that inventory and its value. These federal requirements also dictate how much match we as a state have to contribute, and all of that match requirement passes through the AAA. So we have a match responsibility, and our partners like Family Means and New Tracks all have matching responsibilities for the grants that they receive. And then finally, the Older Americans Act regulations require service providers to collect voluntary contributions through either cost sharing or general contributions. And then we have the state policy. So the state has the power to interpret the federal regulations and apply it across AAAs and service providers in Minnesota. So in Minnesota, we have been in the national headlines for reasons that none of us signed up for, right? And for this conversation, I'm going to connect that to fraud and all of the compliance changes happening because of the fraud that has been uncovered. So for us, some of these state regulations are new. Now, they may have been there as a requirement for all of time, but our state funder did not require it of us or of our grantees. But starting in 2026, we as a funder are now required to do pre-award risk assessments, financial reconciliations. So asking our providers for receipts on how they spent the money that we gave them. We do site visits. The state gives us insurance requirements, reporting requirements. The Board on Aging dictates how services are tracked, and they have service specific policies. So while the federal government may say grab and go meals are allowed, the state can say grab and go meals are allowed if A, B, and C. And so the state has that autonomy to do so, and it's the AAA's responsibility to implement federal and state policies. We then get to add our own layer of compliance. So I'll show you the complete list of services, but we don't have a bottomless bucket of funding, right? So we as an area agency on aging have to choose which services would be most beneficial to older adults in our 7 counties. And that's how conversations like these can help us. Because if our funds are being slated for home modification, but the regulations are too much, so no one's using home modification dollars, would those dollars be better utilized in transportation? These are the kinds of groups that we participate in to learn if that would be a good use of public funds. We also are responsible for contract templates, requests for proposal, how long our award cycle can be, how we reimburse you, and how we monitor state and federal requirements. So we have an alphabet of service options. Primary categories are B, C, D, and E. I can share this presentation with Katie so that you're aware. But it's one of the beauties of these dollars is the eligibility requirements, because this program is not a means tested program. We will ask you as a provider to ask older adults how much they make in general terms in income brackets, and that's for demographic reasons and for us to show that the dollars are being used to serve those in greatest need. So here are some requirements that we ask of our providers: that they have older adults sign an eligibility form in person within 21 days. So that's an example. Wow, it's wanting to move on. That's an example of how the federal government has an eligibility requirement. The state added their flair, and Trellis is responsible for making sure it's done within 21 days. You also have to track your services and the people you serve in a system called PeerPlace, which I think our friends on this call could attest to is not the best client tracking system that ever existed. So I would say that's a downfall for this, but it's a requirement to receive the funds. And then there's a matching requirement as well. So because PowerPoint's moving us on to nutrition, this is our biggest bucket of funds. We have about $8 million that can go for congregate meals or home delivered meals. There's an expanded eligibility pool. I wish I knew how to control my transitions. My apologies. The eligibility form has to be signed within 7 days. There's a 15% match requirement, and we are required by state regulation to reimburse providers on a per meal base, which is not the same for those doing rides or caregiver support groups, where we reimburse you for your allowable expenses in the last report period. Title 3D as in dog, again, broad eligibility category. My goodness. There's no match requirement. It supports classes such as SAIL, Tai Chi Quan, Moving for Better Balance, Living Well with Chronic Conditions, Powerful Tools for Caregivers. The options are endless, mostly endless, but providers are responsible for identifying the training their staff, getting volunteers trained to lead the classes. So there are provider responsibilities with that. The OAA Title III-E supports caregiver services, which is what we have partnered with Family Means for my entire time here at Trellis to deliver support groups, respite, information and assistance, to get information out to caregivers in public settings such as community fairs. So the eligibility category is expanded and includes, I would say, 3 lanes of folks: anyone caring for someone over the age of 60, someone caring for someone of any age who has Alzheimer's or a related condition, and then grandparents raising grandchildren. This pocket of funds has a 25% match requirement and requires providers do a cost sharing, not a voluntary contribution. So it is required to come up to a caregiver to say, you came to our support group 4 times this month. The value of that service is $100. Based on your income, we're requesting that you contribute $5 per support group. So if you've ever referred a caregiver to someone like Family Means and they're able to join that class without an expense, it's because it's funded by these dollars. We don't like to talk about this as a free service, but it is a helpful service for those who can't privately pay for it on their own, or for those who are not financially eligible for Medicaid. So that's our responsibility as administrators of these federal funds. And I just wanted to share that you all are invited to connect with us in a funding capacity. Absolutely, we would love to share more. But if this, for whatever reason, you're not interested in these funds, you can still engage with us to provide feedback on how we use these dollars, engage with our board of directors or as a community advisory member to say, we really don't have homemaker services in Northeast Ramsey County. How can Trellis help make that a priority, or how can we build capacity in that part of our service area? Every time we release these funds for public competition, we do a public hearing to say, here is what we know our budget to be. Here is what we are planning to spend our money on. Do you agree with this, or do you have feedback? And we are required by law to take that feedback in and relay it to our board of directors, who is the ultimate decision maker on how we use these funds. So that's what I had to share about the Older Americans Act. And I'd just like to put in a plug that everything I mentioned here, other area agencies on aging across the state also do. And so if you have colleagues across the state, if you're part of a regional office, if you have friends in other states, what I shared with you today should be replicated across Minnesota and across the country.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Before we move on, our next subjects will be totally unrelated to the Older Americans Act. So does anybody have 1 or 2 very quick questions about that information? All right. Amanda made a quick reference to the fact that we've had some interest in fraud in Minnesota. So we did get a question ahead of time about a new financial fraud law and some potential protection for vulnerable adults. If any of our panelists have information about kind of what's included in that law, and if there are people who have clients or others that they think have been a victim of a scam, kind of what is available to them now, that would be super helpful. My dog also would like to answer, but she's not sure what the answer is.
I do not have any specifics, but I'm assuming it's consumer protection put out by the Attorney General's office. Is that what was referenced?
Not specifically, but I think probably, yeah. I think that's
okay. I'm sorry, I don't have any additional details. I can follow up and share the AG's website. I also know that the Attorney General's website is listing all of the cases that they are initiating with the state and federal government that you can keep track of. But that's all that I'm aware of.
Great. I'm not sure who asked that question, so I don't know if the person who asked that question, it was at our annual meeting as a refresher. So if that person is on and has any other details. Cool. Then we also had some questions about min choices. And as a Parks and Rec person, I tried really hard to wade through the alphabet soup of the government to form some questions here. But it sounds like some of our class members have been experiencing a 9-month or more wait for some of the home and community-based services assessments to come through, and wondering, especially from the county, if you've got perspective on that and kind of where that's all going.
Sure, I can pop in, and then Kelly, if you have anything additional to add. I will say that about 9 months ago, the county board approved 80 additional workers to be part of the min-choice assessment work, with the intention of cutting down those wait lists. And I did reach out to Katie Molinaire, who runs our Aging and Disability Services. And so I'm going to look at my notes to make sure I get this right. But basically, if we divide two different categories, there are folks who get min-choice assessments who are under age 65 and who may have all sorts of other reasons to be getting assessed, and those over age 65. So those over 65, we are down to approximately a 1-month waiting list, which is getting us very close to the idea of getting 20 working days from the referral date. So 20, like business days. So we have been able to close that. For residents who are under age 65, there still is a 7 to 8 month waiting list. So we're not satisfied with that, but it is part of our process and improvements and investing in our min choices staff. I'll also say that, as you can imagine, the hiring that we hire in tiers, and then there's different amounts of training, and then different amounts of onboarding until they have their own full caseloads and are off and running on their own. And so we only anticipate that as that last cohort gets through with its training and onboarding, and then taking the training wheels off, however that happens in that process, that these impacts should continue to hold us steady.
I'll just add a couple things to that. So I do know that we're not the only county that also saw increased wait times. Other metro counties like Hennepin, Anoka, and Dakota have also boosted staffing in recent years to really keep up with this demand. In fact, I think that's what really set us behind. It was that we lost a large number of our staffing to a neighboring county, which is really unfortunate. And I think it also kind of goes with workforce shortages and complex eligibility processes, and the higher demand for core services are really what is taking the assessments a little bit longer. And then I just want to add that, our division leadership have been really active in partnering with the Minnesota Association of Social Service Administration to advance legislation that, can help streamline processes and reduce administrative burdens in home and community-based services so that residents can get these services a little more timely. But other than that, Tara really recapped it really well.
Awesome. Thanks. That's super helpful. There was a kind of follow-up question in there. My understanding from the question is that this is all also a federal program that's kind of distributed. Is there a way that the general public can kind of see how those contracts are laid out? So when we've got the stipulations for 20-day review times and that kind of thing, is that something people can find and access somewhere?
So this is really getting into the weeds. So when I started off by saying, this isn't really what the county commissioners do all the time, but I did reach out to Katie. And so her understanding, so I'm just going to read straight from my notes on this one, that her understanding is that the Minnesota Department of Human Services is that this change does not require this Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services approval, but DHS has indicated they will update their guidance for the lead agencies, and they anticipate receiving that updated guidance soon. And then the question of is it possible to get a copy of the contract Minnesota has with CMS is that you should be able to see these on the Medicaid website. And understanding that there are different plans for the different waiver programs, because there are several different waiver programs. But all of this should be available on the community-based services manual. There's a hot link, and I can drop these links into the chat if we need to.
Cool. Yeah, those questions were from one of our estate law members. So most of us not understanding the technicalities makes sense. So thank you for those. I think that's super helpful. Does anyone have any min choices questions before we move on?
I have a question to the group, which is just, so we're hearing from staff that the wait list has gone down. How are you all experiencing that? I'm curious to see how that's working on your ends, if you have clients that are going through the system.
I just had someone in my office yesterday who said that they were told there's a 9-month wait.
Are
And
they,
but they said they were told if they have a place picked out and their MA application was through, then it would be quicker.
okay, so this is a 65 plus person who was told it's still a 9-month wait.
Yeah,
That's
this was
good information
yesterday.
for us to have.
Linda, do you have something?
Well, I'm in Washington County mainly, so I guess my representation might be different than what Tara and Kelly might be speaking to. But it is definitely still a 9-month wait over here in Washington County. For the 65 plus.
Okay.
So when you said earlier, I think it was you, Tara, it might have been Kelly, it was for the staff increase was for the under 65. Is that correct? No, it was for the over 65.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
good.
staff increase was just in March of last year we approved an additional 80 FTEs for the whole division, for the whole aging and disability services and min choice division. So that's broken down into like managers, supervisors, and
Right.
assessors, with the bulk of them being assessors. And like Commissioner Jebens-Singh said earlier, like in the notes that we have as well, that the last batch of 30 assessors just completed their training and at the end of January. So we expect that wait times will be going down as they're continuing to build their caseloads and do their assessments.
Thank you.
So the information that I had gotten was that our current oldest referral, and this was as of the end of last week, was from early January 2026. But to the person who had said that they just had a senior be told that it could be a 9-month wait list, the thing that I think about is that less than a year ago, people were experiencing those wait times. So I know as somebody who used to be in offices where we would give these kinds of information out to people, you want to be able to give families and individuals and caregivers a realistic, pragmatic, this is how long it's going to take so that they can figure out what to do between now and then. So I wouldn't be surprised if people are used to saying that because it used to be that way. But also hearing this, I want to be able to go and double check with our staff as to say, if people are still feeling this is a long wait list, is this correctly how people are experiencing this? Meaning, do we still have some folks who are lost in our system and not getting prompt service?
Do we have anyone else on the call that works with min choices assessments that has anything to add? Awesome. Those were kind of the meat of our kind of prepared topics. I did want to give a little bit of space before class feedback to the commissioners. If commissioners or Amanda, if you have quick tidbits about like any programs going on in the county that you think people kind of need to hear more about, if there's stuff that needs some more visibility, give you some time to share any of those out.
Well, I'll just say that I think we would be remiss not to mention what's happening with Metro Operation Surge and how that's impacting and being so tremendously disruptive for all of our caretaking services. And a lot of our schools and well, I'll just say there's a number of businesses and other kinds of things that have been disruptive, and with that disruptions, it disrupts our caregiving services. So if families have students who are staying at home, if families are sheltering in place, that means that they aren't staffing our assisted livings or our home health care agencies or any of the other numbers of services that happen. If people are feeling less comfortable driving around, that means we have less volunteers for Meals on Wheels delivery. I mean, I think all of you are probably living and experiencing that in real time. And just to say that one of the things that we at the county throughout all of this, even just beginning at the start of the year with the push and pull and back and forth of this administration's funding and policy changes, has been to fight to find ways to still have continuity of service through the county, but also to support the greater ecosystem of caretaking throughout the county. And so, there's any number of things that we can throw into the space that might be resources that the county can have for individuals along that line, but also just wanting to see what real implications people are feeling, as far as temporary short staffness, about any, insecurities. I mean, I'm curious to hear what impacts this has on the community, so that as we are making adjustments in what the county provides, that we're making the right adjustments. There may be, pockets of service that we're not aware of that need additional care or attention. So it would be great to hear from you all on that front.
Great. Commissioner Miller, did you have anything else to add? And then I can toss it out to the group too.
I did not. Sorry.
Nope, that's great. Does class members, do you have kind of responses to Tara, things that you're kind of seeing, any impacts recently, more extended things you're kind of just being aware of right now?
I can just add, we've been fortunate in White Bear Lake with Meals on Wheels. All of our drivers are still able to go out, and we've actually seen a surge of people offering to volunteer in case something's come up, which has been nice.
It's great to hear.
It is.
So given that, I will just throw out the other piece, and I will try to put it into the chat, would be the that we did just get an update on our emergency assistance for rental assistance. And I'll throw that in there because although I'm not hearing a big clamoring of folks who are concerned about this. I think whether it's professionally within your professional spaces or just within our communities, we do understand that one of the repercussions of people sheltering in space, like we learned from COVID, is that rental assistance is going to be the next big thing that starts to tear through as people burn through their short-term savings. So we want to make sure everybody knows how to access those services, whether it's through the county or if the county is the first place they go to start the process, to then work with other referral partners as well.
Right.
And Tara, I've got a question on that. So a lot of these people who are sheltering in place are clearly have concerns about identifying themselves to government entities. So what does that kind of process look like, and what kind of information does the county need in order to provide that support?
I'm going to pass this to Kelly because I
Yeah.
think this is more her forte.
I just asked this yesterday in our board meeting as well because I've had constituents reach out. So to receive any type of services from Ramsey County, we still have to follow the federal government's guidelines. So that is there has to be a citizen in the household to receive those benefits. And to so it's yes, I believe that they do ask that question. I've not gone through the application myself, but I have had some neighbors and residents reach out, and I've advised them that yes, you will have to have a citizen in the household to qualify for those services.
And then is there an age limit on that, the citizen? So if we have an elder who's living with someone who's in their household, is it just the household has to have someone who can provide proof of citizenship?
That's really a great question, and that's something I would actually want to follow back up with you on because I'm not 100% sure, and that is something that it was a follow-up question I had yesterday as well, and when we got our update this morning on the process, I was reading through it and I was still asking that. So I will follow back up and I can send that to Katie to send out to the group because I think that's important to know. And then if they're denied, because I know the importance of getting that denial letter, oftentimes people ask first, well, have you tried the county for your assistance before that, like a nonprofit or a community-based organization is going to help? They need that denial letter first as well. So I know that they're working through applications that they're currently. I said the process can take up to, I believe, 60 days, but it's not taking that long right now. That it's all within, I believe, what was it, Tara, yesterday? 9 days, they said. I think it was 9 days they mentioned yesterday that people are usually going through the process if you have all your documents in and all your paperwork in.
So I don't like,
Sorry about that.
I,
I was trying to pull up that documentation, so I was on a completely different screen. I will say, and I was even just trying to see if it was that somebody was here legally or if or with legal status, or if it was an actual citizenship requirement. So I want to be really careful with my terms because I'm not. I remember at having that question, Kelly, as well,
Mhm.
not only the age of that person, but it looks like, I mean, there could be somebody who helps people do this all the time. I see somebody from Micah who might actually know this better than we do because, again, we're not frontline workers.
Sorry, I don't. And I just had another question. John Slade from Micah. Should I ask my other question?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. In regards to rent assistance and housing, my Micah St. Paul chapter signed on to ask Governor Walz for an eviction moratorium. And from your perch on the county governmental level, are you hearing anything about that? Do you have any thoughts on whether or not that can happen?
So I will say there's been some discussions, and initially for us, so I will say we at the county we believe in walking and chewing gum at the same time. So while folks are floating around the policy implication of what an eviction moratorium would look like, and reflecting on the how that went down when COVID happened. To see like what did that mean for people who had to play rent catch up at the end of it? What did that mean for landlords who are also, small business owners and they themselves might be just 1 or 2 months ahead of their own mortgages? What did all that mean? So while that is being gamed out, we have encouraged our staff to say, while we are part of getting money into the hands of people who need it with emergency system, what are we doing to make sure our teams are ready to respond to that in real time? So I can't speak to an official stance on that policy. What I can say is our immediate thought is we are part of the helping crew. How do we make sure to do that with full throated? And if that means looking at, I mean, I will say some of the conversations I've had with our county manager is it's the beginning of a year. Do we make sure to open the spigot a little, faster at the beginning, at the front end of the year so that we can deal with this immediate need? So these things are the kind of contingencies that we are working in real time at the county.
Thank you.
Great. So class members, we have Ramsey County Commissioners and an expert from Trellis on our call. before we wrap up, is there anything else class members have for ways that the county can advocate for seniors? Things you're seeing that are roadblocks in your everyday work that these folks might be able to help us solve?
I wanted to chime in and talk about eligibility requirements for the Older Americans Act for the service of food security and prepared meals or even grocery delivery. That there are services
Oh man, my
funded
eyes are like
federal.
not burning, but they're just like,
I don't know who is talking, but thank you for that. So the eligibility is 60 plus. We are a publicly funded program, so we we do collect more information than just how old you are, and you do have to sign an attestation at the bottom saying that your information will be shared with the federal government, but it is a state-owned database. Any information that is shared with the federal government is an aggregate. So it's less of a threat, but it's a nice interim because we are not asking for a social security number, an ID, or citizenship status for any of the Older Americans Act services. So for folks who maybe went to a congregate dining site and are no longer comfortable doing that, is a home delivered meal appropriate for them? Or if they need help with groceries or grocery delivery, there is a service if there's an older adult in the home that could be funded by the Older Americans Act. Not perfect, but a little easier in eligibility.
Great, thanks. Anything else, class members? Got some great resources.
I have just one little thing I want to announce because I'm super excited about it. We have finally updated our White Bear Lake Senior Services Guide. Yay! So I will put a link in the notes. But if anyone Lynn, I know you asked about him. I have a bunch here that I'm happy to help get out and about to the community. So
awesome.
That is so exciting.
It is our Bible still.
I have a question for class members on HCBS payments. So more aligned with the fraud headlines, but knowing that HCBS payments have to go through a prepayment review, they're getting lumped in large quantities. So what we have heard from our state funder is that if they are reviewing 1,000 payments and 100 of them have typos, or an error or a resolution that's needed, that the entire lump of 1,000 payment requests is being held before it goes through. So are you guys feeling that yet? Are you having any issues with Medicaid payment that I could take back? Or any applications for Medicaid programs or licenses? Okay. Silence is okay for that type of questions. Thank you.
Awesome. We have a couple minutes left. Does anyone else have fun announcements, things coming up that you would like the class group to know about? If there's no one else, I can chime in. We have winter senior lunch coming up on March 10th. We over at the Commons, and following lunch, we will have a ballroom dance lesson. So if anyone just wants to come over and dance with some folks, we can use some dance partners too. So all that information is on the city website.
On April 6th, I believe it is, we at Mueller Memorial and White Bear Lake are having a joint community ed program here through Hugo, White Bear, all of our local community eds for funeral pre-planning. So it helps seniors to better understand what goes into planning end-of-life services, getting a plan in place. No pressure to fund something, just an opportunity to see what they want and make their wishes known. So that's going to be on April 6th. I think every community ed makes them charge something. So I think it's like $5 and it includes lunch. We provide the lunch for no additional cost. So that's a great resource for people if they're thinking ahead.
Our first class we had, I heard feedback. People loved it and thought it was a great way to do it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Anything else people want to share?
This isn't anything special to share, except just to say that I know that one of the things that's been the best role as a county commissioner is that we get to be a community advocate. So just as we had a question earlier of somebody who still was having that 9-month waiting time as an expectation or other kind of things, please do, if you ever have anything happening in your agency or with any of your families or any of your clients, if there's any way that we as county commissioners can be kind of that, liaison or concierge, even if it ends up being that it's more of a state or federal issue, we are close enough on the ground to try to get you connected to the answers that you need. So I know that I did not have a sense of all of the things that we could do. To answer any of the questions here, but that's why we can follow up afterwards. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and make sure that we, get all the way down to the answers that you need. Because a hot take isn't going to be satisfactory, but we're committed to making sure you get the answers and the help that you need.
Can you give everybody an idea of if you've got an issue that you think Ramsey County can help with, what is your strategy for contacting Ramsey County to get the best responses?
So a couple of things. One is we, in the last year, since we've been here, if somebody has an issue with one of our financial aid services or any of our eligibility determined services, that we do have, regardless of where that information comes in, it does get funneled to a particular place that is leadership within that area so that it's getting triaged appropriately. I will say if somebody already has a case manager or a case number or somebody who's working on their issue, typically what happens next is to make sure that they're, getting connected to the right person and figuring out what the break in communication is. I will say that it's unusual for us as commissioners to somehow put a special circle around somebody's name and then have them jump to the front of the line. But what does happen is that it gets into the queue, and if there has been some kind of break in communication or a missing document or something has happened, that it does highlight that so that things pick up and get where they need to go. And the contact numbers for concern is one, it could be either one of us as commissioners, and I'll drop in my information or Kelly will with her. But also it would be, again, whoever you're already working with. Does that make sense? So, and the reason why I say that is because somebody could be going in for a caddy waiver and have already gotten 3 deep into the process, and then to start fresh on the outside isn't probably the best use of time. It's best to start with where the process you are in. But if you're not getting response or somehow it's just not happening, by all means, let us know, because then we can ring the bell and say something's happening over here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I have 4 minutes left on my clock over here. Are there any other pressing things? Well, we've got the commissioners and Amanda with us today. All right. Well, this meeting has been recorded. I will get the PowerPoint presentation from Amanda as well, and we can kind of share out this information for all of you to reference back. And probably we can get it on the website, right, Taylor? Seems like a thing we can do. So anyone who wasn't able to join us today too has a little bit of reference for today. So once again, thank you to our panelists for taking the time to join us today. Couldn't do it without you. And I know time is short for everyone. So we appreciate you taking the time. And feel free to connect with class anytime. We're always happy to have you. So thanks so much, and we'll give everyone 3 minutes back today. What a gift. Thank you all.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.